From the Gray Man Briefing, this is a summary of recent developments regarding the Second Amendment, cybersecurity, protests, supply chain disruptions, national security, law and order, free speech, censorship, government oversight, and more.
For the third quarter of 2025, this is Update 9 to the Gray Man Briefing's summary of recent developments. Across the country, Mississippi, Louisiana, Tennessee, West Virginia, South Carolina, and Ohio deployed National Guard troops to Washington, D.C. to support federal policing operations. Illinois was identified as a possible next site for Guard and federal law enforcement deployments. Also, Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, and a total of 19 Republican-controlled states are also preparing Guard mobilizations to assist the Department of Homeland Security. And in Indiana, the 7th Circuit upheld an injunction blocking the state's 25-foot police buffer law. Also, Arizona suffered a major dust wall caused by monsoons leading to widespread power outages in the state. Nationally, Russian and Iranian cyber actors escalated attacks on U.S. infrastructure, including a ransomware hit on Colt Technology and a data breach on Alliance Life that exposed 2.8 million customers. Apple and Google released emergency updates to fix critical security flaws, and the godfather of AI warned AI could surpass human intelligence, causing unemployment and an extinction-level event. The DOJ sought to limit Second Amendment reliefs in a Texas-related case, narrowing injunction and an extinction-level event. Also, the DOJ sought to limit Second Amendment relief in a Texas-related case, narrowing injunction scope in the Elite Precision Customs v. ATF, while also setting a national precedence that could limit Second Amendment protections to only those listed in lawsuits against the DOJ. Let's begin with that Second Amendment briefing. On August 21st, the Department of Justice filed a legal brief arguing that relief in Elite Precision Customs versus ATF should be limited only to the named plaintiffs and one Texas retailer. The case challenges the federal ban on handgun purchases across state lines. The Firearms Policy Coalition, or FPC, criticized the DOJ's position, warning it could set a precedent that victories in constitutional lawsuits only apply narrowly instead of protecting all similarly affected Americans. FPC said such a strategy could erode the enforcement of rights beyond the Second Amendment by constraining judicial relief to a handful of individuals. Looking at these military mobilizations, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Tennessee have now joined earlier deployments from West Virginia, South Carolina, and Ohio, bringing more than 2,000 National Guard troops to Washington, D.C. The Tennessee Guard was assigned to monument security, traffic control, and community patrols, while others took general support roles. Secretary of Defense later authorized D.C. Guard troops to carry firearms for use only as a last resort in imminent deadly threat situations. President Trump has suggested that Chicago, Illinois, will be the next city to receive federal Guard and law enforcement support. Separately, about 1,700 Guard members from 19 Republican-led states were scheduled for deployment between late August and November to assist the Department of Homeland Security with immigration enforcement, case management, and logistical duties, marking a broad expansion of Guard use in domestic operations. The Gray Man Briefing is tracking all of these domestic military deployments. For real-time updates and alerts on potential military actions in your region, join at thegraymanbriefing.com, and that's gray with an A. Moving into law and order and a legal update here, the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals upheld a preliminary injunction blocking Indiana's 25-foot police buffer law, ruling it unconstitutionally vague and open to arbitrary enforcement. The law, which was passed back in 2023, made it a misdemeanor to knowingly approach within 25 feet of an officer after being ordered to stop, but judges found that it failed to provide clear standards. The case originated from a lawsuit by media groups who argued the law infringed on constitutional rights to observe and record police. In 2024, a district court first granted the injunction, which the appeals court has now confirmed or affirmed. A revised version of the law requiring officers to have a reasonable belief that interference would occur took effect on July 1st of this year, but its validity still remains uncertain. So the Gray Man Briefing provided a debrief here. It says supporters of the buffer argue the law only applies once an officer gives a clear order to stop approaching, which shifts responsibility to the individual to comply. The framework is intended to enhance both officer safety and suspect safety by providing a controlled perimeter in which tense encounters can unfold. Advocates also connect this concept to the 21-foot rule, also the Tueller drill, which demonstrates how a person armed with a knife or blunt object can cover about 21 feet in roughly 1.5 seconds, about the same time it would take for an officer to recognize the threat and react. That context, the 25-foot buffer zone, offers a margin of safety that prevents sudden close-range attacks and gives officers reaction time to protect themselves and others. While critics raise constitutional concerns, proponents emphasize that the zone is only triggered after an officer issues that stop command, making it a targeted tool for preserving order and safety rather than a broad ban on observation, as cameras obviously can record from 25 plus feet, and the law is only in effect once an officer deems a safety issue has occurred or could occur, and a verbal stop command is given. Now looking quickly here at the civil unrest briefing, pro-Palestinian, anti-Trump, anti-ICE, anti-DC federalization, and of course LGBT protests remain widely ongoing. Pro-Iranian protests also persist but are overshadowed by the demonstrations related to DC, Trump, and ICE. Join the Gray Man Briefing to get these briefs on protest, riots, and extremism sent in real time with analysis at graymanbriefing.com. Moving into national security, Geoffrey Hinton, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist known as the godfather of AI, has now warned that artificial intelligence may evolve beyond human oversight, potentially displacing humanity itself. He said current systems already replace jobs, citing Microsoft's use of AI over junior programmers, and predicted that mass employment could happen. More troubling, he estimated a 10 to 20% chance AI could cause human extinction within 30 years, noting risk of autonomous weapons, cyber warfare, and bioweapons design. Hinton argued that while some critics believe true superintelligence is further away, the timeline may be faster than governments or companies are prepared for. His remarks add weight to calls for regulation and reinforce preparedness measures focused on redundancy, decentralization, and resilience in the face of rapid technological disruption. Which brings us into cybersecurity. The FBI and Cisco Talos warned that Russian state-backed hackers are exploiting an old Cisco iOS flaw to infiltrate networking devices tied to U.S. critical infrastructure, exfiltrating configuration files for reconnaissance. A joint advisory from these U.S. agencies also warned that Iranian state actors and hacktivists may escalate cyber attacks on U.S. energy, utilities, and defense sectors following strikes on those Iranian nuclear facilities a month or so ago. At a corporate level, Colt Technology Services suffered a ransomware attack that forced portions of its infrastructure offline, with the Warlock Group claiming responsibility. In a separate incident, Alliance Life suffered a breach that compromised the data of 2.8 million customers. This included social security numbers, tax IDs, and the such, which are now being circulated online. Apple and Google each issued urgent patches to fix zero-day flaws, with Apple targeting an exploit in its image processing framework that could allow spyware installation, and Google updating Chrome to stop code execution through malicious websites. Officials stress that vulnerabilities, weak passwords, and delayed patching leave both businesses and civilians at heightened risk of disruption, data theft, and further attacks. Let's look now at a natural disaster in Arizona. A massive haboob, which is a dust wall, swept through Phoenix, reducing visibility to zero and cutting power to over 15,000 customers. Wind gusts hit 94 miles per hour in the Santan Valley and around 70 miles an hour in Phoenix, damaging roofs, grounding flights, and causing delays at Sky Harbor International Airport. Residents reported dust infiltrating homes, visibility so poor that drivers could not even see the front of their own vehicles. Meteorologists said that the storm was fueled by monsoon outflows, making it the season's first major dust wall. Experts warn more dust storms and flash flooding could occur in coming weeks, especially in areas vulnerable to desert conditions or burn scars. So that is it for this week's summary of recent developments. Remember, these briefings are delivered in real time to Gray Man Briefing subscribers sent via Telegram and the Signal app. and also weekly emails. Please interact with this broadcast to help increase its engagement and views. Thanks for listening, and as always, remain aware, be vigilant, and stay safe.